Brazen.
In December 2018, Adam Neumann was ready to celebrate. The WeWork CEO and his top executives had just spent months negotiating an investment that would dramatically change the future of the office-sharing company.
This was ready to happen, and they had been sort of assured that everything was pencils down, the deal's done.
They were thrilled, a little tired, and ready for the winter break.
And so Adam took the WeWork private jet that he bought, WeWork's money, and brought it to Hawaii and was surfing with Laird Hamilton, the surfing legend, on the waves there. And then on Christmas Eve, he gets a call from Masa.
Masa, being Japanese tech investor and WeWork's biggest backer, Masayoshi Son.
And Masa just simply tells him, the deal's off. I can't go through with this.
Masa was also Adam's mentor, and the two men had concocted an audacious plan to take on the global real estate sector. Yet, just when Neumann's own vision was coming together, his biggest supporter was backing out. The question now was how to respond.
I mean, he scrambled. In shock, he calls his deputies and then kind of rapidly tries to salvage it, and it doesn't work. This was going to be the largest buyout ever of a startup. And if you look back on it, the notion that it almost happened is totally insane. I mean, it was incredibly close to happening.
This is The Closer, the inside story of the deals that changed the world. I'm Aimee Keane. On this episode, WeWork. But not the WeWork story you might know already. This is a story about a little-known deal that came before the company tried to go public. A $20 billion idea codenamed Project Fortitude that never came to be. It was a turning point in WeWork's history. And that failure led to this one.
The company was one of the hottest startups in history. Then it plunged from nearly $50 billion in value to basically worthless in just 6 weeks.
WeWork is withdrawing its IPO prospectus.
As soon as these numbers went out, nobody wanted to buy this company.
This spectacular implosion of WeWork in 2019 didn't come out of nowhere. The story starts much earlier, when Adam and Masa first entered each other's orbit. To understand the series of events that led to the company's downfall, I talked to a pair of reporters from the Wall Street Journal who pieced together the story of this company in gritty detail. Elliot Brown.
It's just insane. It is still a bit hard for me to comprehend, even after having written a book about it.
And Maureen Farrell.
Adam is really like the poster child of this generation of entrepreneurs. Really, no one thought bigger. Almost no one raised as much money as him, and then no one had a swifter fall.
In 2021, Maureen and Elliot published The Cult of WeWork, Adam Neumann, and the Great Startup Delusion. It was the product of years of reporting on WeWork and the private investment in tech that created a generation of so-called unicorn companies, meaning private companies valued at $1 billion or more. And they were called unicorns because they were rare, at least at one point. And what sets WeWork apart from the other unicorns comes down to the two men at the center of this deal. There's Adam Neumann, the co-founder of WeWork.
When you go into a WeWork, if we did it right, there's an energy that you feel. And it's an energy of people doing their own thing while actually still being part of something greater than themselves. We like to call it the We generation.
And Masayoshi Son, the CEO of the Japanese multinational conglomerate SoftBank.
I have a vision. I have a vision of singularity that's really coming. So we create a vision fund, right? We go and change the world together.
But these two guys?
These were two people that, really should never have met.
Elliot covers finance for the Journal, which is how he first met Adam Neumann back in 2013.
I was covering the office market, and there was this, fast-growing co-working company, and that was a trend I was following. So I went to Lower Manhattan to just meet him, and he was 30 minutes late. He kept me waiting. He sort of brings me into the office, and he's this really tall, lumbering guy who just seems totally full of energy. He's just like name dropping and talking about Ashton Kutcher and his meeting with Rahm Emanuel and how this firm is just going to keep growing and growing and growing, and this thing that has like 5 offices. So I remember sort of being puzzled as to both amazed at the pace of the business and before I thought too much of it, and then kind of taken with this like totally crazy guy who just seemed full of energy. And he was like, you're the real estate reporter. I don't think you're the right one for this story. But then I sort of convinced him that I was the only one who was going to do it. And then he opens up the door to the office as I'm leaving, and he yells to everyone, this is Elliot. He's a friend. Give him whatever he wants.
It's quite a first meeting.
Yeah.
Fast forward a few years. Maureen was covering IPOs, or initial public offerings, where a company first sells shares to the market. And a big story was forming on her beat. Saudi Arabia was about to take Aramco, the state oil company, public.
Suddenly they were going to be essentially like take the whole country public. And there's this huge like pot of like gold seemingly for bankers and investors and everyone coming for all this oil money that was suddenly going to be in the public markets. So, the world was essentially kind of flocking to the kingdom as they were opening up its coffers. But probably the largest beneficiary in some ways was Masa-san.
Masa had been an investor in tech companies for years.
This took him to a new level, and he was really like supercharging everything about financing.
So Adam and Masa meet for the first time in India. It's 2016, and they're both in New Delhi for a startup conference.
At this cocktail party after the big event, that they kind of sat in a corner together and really just talked sort of nonstop for like a half an hour. And Adam was being Adam. He was making a lot of jokes. Like people said he was kind of like really cracking Masa up. And it's funny, a lot of people who knew both of them were like, the minute they meet each other, there's no way that they won't be in business together.
But Masa isn't quite ready to invest in WeWork. He is, however, working on something big.
Later on in 2016, basically it became clear that Masa was going to raise this never-before-seen amount of money, all directed at tech startups.
$100 billion that would go into something he called the Vision Fund, money for big-thinking tech founders who Masa believed in. This was the era of investors putting a lot of money into new tech startups, especially in Silicon Valley, with the bet that they'd earn back multiples of their investment when these companies eventually went public.
It was solely the result of kind of money irrationally thinking that there was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Elliot's point about irrational money is really important here, because the Vision Fund is about to make that pot at the end of the rainbow seem a whole lot bigger. It's also going to give the founders it invests in more room and more time to grow their businesses, and to do so away from the scrutiny of the market. This was something no one had seen at this scale before. In December 2016, Masa makes a visit to New York. He's got 2 people to see.
Masa was actually coming to meet Donald Trump, who was then the president-elect. And there were some intermediaries who knew Masa, who were close to Adam, who were saying, you have to get a meeting with him. You met him. He's coming to New York.
So before Masa's big meeting with Donald Trump, he makes a pit stop at WeWork's headquarters.
And Adam was so excited for this and, really knew he needed this money and he knew he had to really land this deal, basically. So Masa came in and they prepared the office in such a way. There's always this thing where they would so-called activate the space, where they'd get people, doing fun things, drinking, doing whatever it was to show that there was all this energy in the WeWork space. And people said they even had someone making waffles. Thought the smell of waffles would be nice for Masa as he walked around. But Adam, who was always known for keeping people waiting forever, kept Adam waiting. Masa was very late to show up to this meeting. And then once he came in, he did a true whirlwind tour. He took about 12 minutes to go through the whole office. And at the end of it, he said, just come in the car with me to Adam. So Adam jumps in the car. They're going from WeWork headquarters about like 30 or 40 blocks up to Trump Tower. They get very much stuck in Midtown traffic. So it takes them a while. And over the course of this say 45-minute-ish car ride up to Trump Tower, they start talking about what an investment in WeWork by SoftBank would look like. And Adam starts talking about what he'd do with the money. They sort of look together, sketch out a map of the world and how WeWork would take over the world. And by the time Adam walks out of this car, he's dropped off at Trump Tower, he's landed about more than $4 billion in new investment, which was well more than they had ever landed before. It was just this giant amount of cash.
Adam liked to tell people that it took him 28 minutes to get Masa to write him a $4 billion check.
He is just jubilant, and he comes back to the office and he barges into one of his top deputies' rooms and just says, like, guess what happened?
For Adam, this was a huge win. For Masa, well, he goes on to his meeting with the president-elect.
If you remember, he was sort of bringing all these people in. It was like a big show, and it was all, we were watching a lot of it live on TV.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Masa of SoftBank from Japan, and he's just agreed to invest $50 billion in the United States and 50,000 jobs. And he's one of the great men of industry, so I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is one.
And if you'd like to speak to him, you can. But one of the truly great men, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You may want to say hello.
Yes, thank you.
I'll see you soon, okay?
And after Trump leaves the lobby, the TV cameras turn to Masa.
Masa Song, CEO. No, I'm CEO of SoftBank.
Someone, possibly a reporter off camera, mistakes him for the CEO of Foxconn, which is this Taiwanese company that makes electrical parts for Apple.
No, we don't make Apple phones. My friend make Apple phones. We are SoftBank. I just came to celebrate his new job. United States, U.S. will become great again.
At the time, it's funny, when the Vision Fund started, all of a sudden there were all these articles saying, this very little known investor from Japan is investing in these startups. If you read the articles at the time of the dot-com boom, he was one of the biggest investors in SoftBank in the United States. He's had this very long, very up and down career as an investor.
Masa likes to say he was the richest man in the world for a few days. This was during the dot-com boom. But then he lost about $70 billion when these tech companies went bust.
Masa has ridden waves.
Here's another one. He managed to turn a $20 million investment in Alibaba into $60 billion when the e-commerce company IPO'd. This is one of those investments Masa made because of how the founder made him feel. In this case, it was Alibaba's founder, Jack Ma.
He had no business plan, zero revenue, but his eyes was very strong eyes, strong, shining eyes.
In 2015, Masa was ready to get back to the U.S., ready to ride the wave of a revived American tech startup scene, and the idea for the Vision Fund was born.
And he always has spoken in this very grandiose terms of visions, 10, 20, 100-year visions. But he began to think that he could create the tech companies that would dominate, change the future, and win by putting huge amounts of money, never before seen amounts of money into tech companies. And so that was sort of the vision of the Vision Fund.
So it's 2016. Masa's developing his idea of the Vision Fund just as Saudi Arabia is looking to open up its economy. Masa and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS as he's often called, arrange a meeting. And as Masa's preparing for the meeting, he's talking to his deputies about how much of an investment he's going to ask for.
And he says, I think it's about 10 billion, crosses it out to 100 billion. And he goes into this meeting with MBS, tells him his grand vision for technology changing the world. He's going to be in the middle of it. And he likes to say it was a 45-minute meeting.
45 minutes, $45 billion.
he walks out with $45 billion.
$1 billion per minute.
When you hear these things like 45 billion in 45 minutes, and you think, oh, there must be more to the story. There really wasn't. In a lot of ways, these were as decisions that were almost as like snap decisions as they were made out to be, which is crazy.
Suddenly, out of kind of nowhere, this guy ends up pulling out $100 billion almost out of thin air. It was baffling. I just didn't understand it. It's like, him? You're giving him $45 billion? I mean, with the Alibaba investment was clearly very good, but largely was known for his flops. And so he's the guy who you give the largest check ever written for startups to. It was just kind of confusing.
Regardless, Masa is now at the helm of one of the biggest tech investment funds in the world. He's got money to spend, money that Adam and WeWork need to keep growing.
And Masa is one of the most visionary investors in the world. I see Masa as one of the best or the best high-growth investor in the world, and I'm pleased that he chose to invest in us.
By the time Adam meets Masa in Manhattan, WeWork is expanding at breakneck speed. New locations mean more revenue. And that growth is what's helping him raise money from private investors at record-breaking valuations. It's also helping Adam position WeWork as a tech company. He calls it space as a service, a play on the idea of software as a service.
It's not even about being technology first. In today's world, when you build a company, if you're not technology-oriented and you're not letting that lead your information process and your decision-making process, then you're missing out.
And now that he had Masa's investment, he wanted to take that company even further in this direction.
He was incredible at branding and marketing, not just the company and the idea, and not just turning a real estate company into a tech or an AI company. But I mean, he was amazing at branding himself as this visionary entrepreneur and, getting himself on magazine covers. And he really became kind of like a rock star. And he had the swagger, he had this image, and he was always cultivating it.
And as much as some people tell, the we generation or millennials are slightly entitled, it doesn't. You're not entitled if you really know what you want, and you're going to keep searching until you find that thing that touches you. And when you do find that thing that touches you, you're going to work harder, you're going to put more effort into it, you're going to worry less about salary and more about what impact am I having, and that's WeWork.
But when it came down to it, WeWork was in the business of subleasing office space. That's it. That's the product.
Where the world got carried away was trying to see something else in that business than what it was, which was something very simple. This was simply a real estate company.
The core WeWork business operated a lot like a European company called Regus. Only Regus, which pitched itself as a pure shared office space provider, was valued on the stock market at $4 billion. Around the same time, WeWork was $16 billion. But Adam was talking about nothing short of world domination. And that was language that Masayoshi-san could relate to.
I still want to invest more and I want to increase. Some of my investors said, Masa, you get too excited. Don't go too far, too much. But if I could increase, I would like to increase.
First of all, I think he saw Adam Neumann and was really entranced by him and everything Adam was telling him. And that was something that Masa did a lot. He just become very obsessed with these entrepreneurs and really listened to them. But Adam was also, very savvy about this. He knew Masa wanted to invest in tech companies that were going to change the world.
And something beautiful about Masa's and my relationship is how we communicate. So if I have something I need to change or talk about, or he has something he needs to talk about, we call each other. We actually prefer face-to-face meetings. It's a real partnership.
While Adam might have a partnership with Masa, his staff and some of his investors are getting frustrated with the way he's running the company, burning cash, consolidating his power, and making investment decisions that don't seem to relate to the core business.
Like he had bought 40% of a wave pool company that would make pools that you could surf at in the middle of the country. And he was flying private all the time by renting jets. So it was not a particularly stellar company, but it had grown very large. And at that point was really going to need money from somewhere. And it was going to need probably to IPO because they had basically tapped out every other source of funding on the planet that would go to a company like that.
Here's the thing about taking a company public, though. When you make an initial public offering of shares, you also have to regularly disclose to the market exactly how the company's performing. Profits, or in this case, losses, assets and liabilities, and how much the CEO gets paid, just to name a few others. Founders of unicorn companies weren't in the habit of divulging this kind of information.
He never really wanted to go public. He was nervous about what the public markets would put on him, what he would be allowed to do, what he wouldn't, all the reporting he would have to do. So this would keep him out of the public markets. He would have sort of an infinite supply of capital.
Did it feel like something wasn't quite right? Were there any sort of red flags to you as financial reporters in these early days of the Vision Fund?
Yeah. I mean, it did start to feel like from the early days and as it went forward, I mean, it did start to feel like they were literally just throwing money at companies. And in a lot of ways they were. I mean, companies would go in and ask for a certain amount of money. Masa would give them 5 or 10 times that amount. You never see that in investing. People always have to kind of beg for more, wish they were getting more. And it was turning everything on its head. And it always felt like this can't end well.
We'll be right back. All right, let's get back into the story. In 2017, WeWork receives its first injection of cash from the SoftBank Vision Fund, $4.4 billion worth. The next year, another $3 billion. At $20 billion, it had become one of the most valuable startups in the world.
Adam gets this enormous investment from SoftBank, and the company then sort of continues to grow very fast. They expand into more areas of the world and become more global. But even then, it's clear it is going to need a lot more money.
Here's the problem. The WeWork board wants Adam to raise money by taking the company public. This way, it can raise money and early investors can cash out. But Masa's telling Adam to do something else.
But then Adam is sort of pushed by Masa to think even bigger. And Masa keeps telling him to be crazier. And the people around Adam thought this was totally scary because Adam was already the craziest person they knew. So indeed, Adam then starts to act crazier. And he feels a need to make WeWork bigger than Masa originally, had even pitched to him. And so he pitches this idea internally that becomes known as the triangle. Sketches out on a marker board to employees in the room one day that WeWork's business will be 3 different points in a triangle.
One will be WeWork. One will be something called ARK, which was a play on Noah's Ark for its real estate investments. And the third will be services and retail.
Next to each of those points, he writes a 1T, meaning each will be worth $1 trillion, and WeWork will be this $3 trillion business.
Keep in mind that at this point, not even Apple was $1 trillion company.
So he's imagining WeWork is going to be the most valuable company in the world very quickly. He flies to Japan for one of the sort of periodic meetings with Masa, wasn't sure if he was going to present this or not, and then he's trying to read the room and sort of sees an opening, and then just kind of blurts it out to Masa that he has this plan for WeWork to go even bigger, and pitches this idea.
Masa's intrigued. The meeting ends up kicking off a series of meetings with senior staff from SoftBank and WeWork throughout the summer of 2018. During one of those meetings, this time in New York, Adam tells Masa how much money he needs.
And what he sort of ultimately asks for is $70 billion.
$70 billion. I'm just going to pause here for a minute to put this number in context. You'll remember that the Vision Fund was a pot of $100 billion in total. As for the record of what a private company had raised to this point, well, Uber held that for raising $12 billion total since its founding.
So he's asking what would just be this unheard of amount of capital.
Adam tells Masa that together, the two of them will take on the entire real estate market, that they'll build a company worth, wait for it, trillions of dollars.
We're going to own the entire sector. We're going to have companies. We're going to be buying brokerages, lease space to other companies. We're going to go into other companies' offices and design their chairs and empty their trash. anytime anything happens in the commercial real estate sector or anything to do with office space, WeWork will be there.
This is where the plan, codenamed Project Fortitude, is hatched. Adam first makes his ask of $70 billion, and then he showers Masa with projections of just astounding growth that would come with this investment. Instead of asking sort of questions about how realistic this was, what did Masa do instead? How did he respond?
Masa was intrigued. He doesn't just laugh him out of the room, which I think would have been the response of most anyone else in the world with money. But he actually says, yeah, let's keep talking.
Most investors would have been scared off by this point, but not Masa. Masa agrees to a deal. Not for $70 billion, but for a still record-breaking $20 billion. Half in cash and half to buy out existing investors.
Project Fortitude was what would have been the largest buyout of a startup ever,
making Masa and Adam the sole owners of a WeWork valued at $47 billion.
I mean, emotionally, it was like they were going to be partners. And it was represented just this whole new world for Adam Neumann. For Masa, I mean, it represented having put a lot of money already into WeWork. This was, if it had ever worked out this way, I mean, he wanted global domination. He wanted these giant businesses, and this was going to be a way, potentially to do this.
In these meetings, Masa keeps daring Adam to think even bigger. 100 million members by 2028. $500 billion in revenue. A $10 trillion valuation. None of these numbers sound real, and yet to Masa and Adam, they were somehow.
And so then over the course of the summer, they just have sort of meeting after meeting in New York and Tokyo and San Francisco and London, where they continue to talk about sort of what this thing would look like and how you would structure it, how much money it would actually need, where that money could come from.
Executives from both sides believe they were close to closing this deal. But Adam keeps returning to specific points relating to his role in the company.
He wanted all sorts of stipulations in there. I mean, there are things like if he was ever committed a felony, they couldn't push him out as CEO. And the negotiations just took longer, and it sort of lingered on the back and forth until December. But right around then, they thought the deal was done. I mean, there were conversations between SoftBank and WeWork top people basically saying, okay, we'll sign on the dotted line. Things are coming your way. And what wound up happening was a couple of things.
First, Elliot and Maureen got word about Project Fortitude.
We wrote about it and really worried investors in SoftBank. So the stock really took a beating at that point once it was sort of out there in the Wall Street Journal. Secondly, I mean, I guess this is another critical point. They thought they would put money from the Vision Fund into this deal. But the Saudis really got cold feet about it. They said, hey, we gave you all this money to invest in technology. We have real estate investments. And so what happened to the stock of SoftBank really mattered.
Then, in October of 2018, news breaks that Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi had been assassinated in the Saudi consulate in Turkey.
Jamal Khashoggi entered the Saudi consulate in Istanbul and never left. Turkish investigators allege a Saudi hit team was waiting for him. They report he was killed almost immediately and that his body was dismembered.
The Turkish government releases photos and other evidence that point to the Vision Fund's biggest backer as the mastermind behind the murder, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
Masa's son is in a super precarious position right now because he has a very close and personal relationship to the Crown Prince.
Suddenly, a lot of the money flowing through Silicon Valley is coming under scrutiny.
SoftBank is getting rocked here, dropping about 7% in Tokyo on Monday, now down nearly 20% this month. At least part of the pressure here, all the bad news tied to Saudi Arabia.
And then in December,
well, there was a larger sell-off in the global tech stock market. And SoftBank also, right around that time, had taken one of its companies public, and it had done really poorly. So all those things came together. They were worried that it could cause all of SoftBank to kind of unravel if the stock fell too much.
Sure enough, SoftBank shares tumble even more, and Masa has to rethink the deal with Adam.
His CFO basically told him right around this time, you can't go through with it. Investors are going to revolt against our stock, and we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So basically, Masa calls Adam.
And Masa just simply tells him, the deal's off. I can't go through with this.
This is at Christmas when they're both in Hawaii.
So Masa's in Hawaii, and he says, Adam's on Kauai, and he's going to fly to a different island to meet Masa. And so he's, I'll come over there. And so he has his, puts together a presentation to go try to convince Masa to, still give him money. And I think the pitch is essentially along the lines, but this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. These don't come around. This is your chance. And sort of reminding Masa of the big fish thinking he likes to do. And it doesn't work.
Adam eventually convinces Masa to give him $2 billion, $1 billion in new cash, and another $1 billion to buy out some existing investors.
So it's this sort of face-saving move to give WeWork a little bit of cash.
$1 billion of new cash is a lot of money in most contexts, but it wasn't going to go very far at WeWork. The company would have to go public. But of course, WeWork never did go public with Adam at the helm. After a series of missteps and failures, the company pulled its initial public offering in September 2019.
A lot of these companies like to focus on the CEO, and Adam Neumann, there was some heat around him.
This guy, Adam Neumann, walks away with $1 billion plus, and now we've got the workers on the street with nothing.
CEO Masayoshi Son of SoftBank is almost downplaying this massive debacle, almost normalizing the behavior of this controversial CEO.
They dreamt up ideas for new businesses, startups, and that was the pitch. Of course, we ultimately saw just how hollow it was.
Adam was pushed out, though he walked away with a $185 million payout and $1 billion in stock. Meanwhile, 8,000 WeWork jobs disappeared between attrition, outsourcing, and layoffs. And almost overnight, employees lost most of the value of their WeWork equity. And Masa, he had to face his own investors.
If you look at what ended up happening with Masa and SoftBank, he had to, really apologize publicly to his shareholders, to the public, for putting $10 billion into WeWork. I mean, just imagine if he had put another $20 billion in on top of that.
Under new leadership and at a fraction of its earlier valuations, the company did end up joining the public market. It did so through something called a SPAC, or Special Purpose Acquisition Vehicle, in October 2021. Project Fortitude was a turning point in the WeWork story. It changed Adam and Masa's relationship, and it triggered a chain of events that ultimately turned the world's highest valued startup into a real estate business worth about $1 billion. This was all after the deal collapsed. How shocked were you when any one of your sources shared that this was completely coming to an end?
I guess we knew it was on the rocks to begin with, because we knew that they were having trouble with their own financiers, and the notion that SoftBank was actually going to spend $20 billion to buy most of WeWork just seemed wildly crazy.
It was almost like when we were writing the book, it was almost more surprising to learn how definitive it was, and to talk to all the different people in the company, and how 100% sure they were it was going to happen. When they were we basically did everything but sign on the dotted line for it. I don't think we quite realized how much of everything that was going on at the company was predicated on this money coming in, and everything that, the hopes and dreams and the projections that Masa and Adam had come up with, and sort of made sense in retrospect. And, then we sort of understood the pain and the really terrible position to put the company in.
You think of all of the billions of dollars that went into the company, and all the ideas for what it could become. And now it is a office leasing, co-working company that's valued, depending on the day, at about $3 or $4 billion. What should we all make of the company that came out of all of this investment?
WeWork today is actually much bigger in terms of number of desks they have than WeWork under Adam, and worth far, far less. So And that was a result of sort of expansion that was planned under Adam that they had to grow into. And, I think this was sort of inevitable.
You both have had front seats to this story. What do you make of all of the forces that allowed Adam and Masa to operate this way? I'm thinking, the availability of private money, the lack of scrutiny on both their operations and governance, and then the way that Masa enabled Adam.
I think he really defined an era that has really truly now come to a close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of our main takeaways was the power of herd mentality. And, what you saw here was a lot of actual smart investors and smart people going to, put money in and work for this company and believe in it. And, if you'd really step back to think about it, it never made any sense. But everyone was just sort of looking at everybody else and saying, well, that guy sees something in this company. And so, what ended up happening was just a real emperor's new clothes tale, where at some point somebody was like, there's no clothes on that guy. Like they're there. This is a real estate company.
A real estate company. A real estate company with a tech valuation, all because of the story Adam and his biggest backer, Masa, were able to sell. Elliot, is there a way in which both of these guys, Masa and Adam, contributed to each other's downfall?
Yeah, I mean, they contributed to each other's insanity and sort of fed each other's worst impulses. Like that's what was going on with WeWork and Masa. Is like, had you kept these people separate, you would have still had a lot of craziness of WeWork and still had a lot of craziness of SoftBank. Together, they're both feeding off each other with just promising the totally unachievable to each other, and that makes each of them more excited. And the altitude that went that much higher, and the fall was that much more painful.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, would you please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? Or better yet, share the show with someone who might enjoy it. And hit that subscribe button so you'll know every time we have a new episode. We're bringing you inside deal stories on The Closer, and now it's your turn. Tell us about a time when you were the closer. We're all involved in low-level deal-making every now and then, even if we don't realize it. Think about things like negotiating salary, rent, maybe even your kids' allowances. Or maybe you snagged a hotel upgrade or a bargain on that thing that's never on sale. Whatever it is, we want to hear about it. Here's how. Send us a voice memo with your first name and where you're from. And then in just a few sentences, tell us what the deal was and what it meant to you. You can email your audio file to hello@thecloser.fm. We'll review all the submissions, and we just might play yours on a future episode. Now, if you want more from The Closer, we have the newsletter for you. Go to closer.fm to sign up. It's written by journalist and Closer producer Ben Walsh, and it's witty, informative, and it's the place where he'll dive into the mechanics of M&A and analyze deals in the news. You'll also get a chance to see show notes from each episode and more from our team. Again, you can sign up at closer.fm. And if all of this isn't enough, you can also become a Brazen Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts. You'll get exclusive access to extended interviews and other bonus material from the show. The Closer is a production of Project Brazen in partnership with PRX. Our show's produced by Isabel Kirby-McGowan and Ben Walsh. Siddhartha Mahanta is our editor, Mariangel Gonzalez is our project manager, and Lucy Woods is our fact-checker and head of research. Golda Arthur is our showrunner, and Bradley Hope and Tom Wright are executive producers. At Project Brazen, Francesca Gilardi Quadrio-Corzio and Noor Abdel Latif are podcast strategists. Megan Dean is programming manager, and Ryan Ho is design lead. Thanks to Eric Gomez for audio engineering and sound design. Alex Garcia Amat composed our theme music, and I'm Aimee Keane. Thanks for listening.